My name is Olivia Bennett, and I'm 29 years old. I work as a web designer in the coastal city of Pine Harbor. Everything in my life seemed to be falling perfectly into place. As I looked around the softly lit restaurant, I couldn't help but smile. The fresh flower arrangements, the elegant table settings, and the gentle background music created the perfect atmosphere for our engagement celebration. Tonight was our engagement party, and after 3 years of dating, Ryan and I were finally taking the next step. We were set to be married in just 4 months. Ryan stood tall beside me, his hand resting gently on my back. We'd met at the marketing firm where I worked in the design team when he joined 3 years ago. Everything clicked during a company retreat, and we've been inseparable since. He was thoughtful, reliable, and compassionate. We'd built a life founded on mutual respect, trust, and shared goals. Tonight, we celebrated our engagement with our closest friends and family. Looking around the room, I saw many familiar faces smiling back at me. Ryan's parents, college friends, colleagues, and even some relatives I hadn't seen in years. Of course, my family was there too, or most of them, anyway. Before we continue with today's story, if you're enjoying what you've heard so far, please hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber helps me keep sharing these inspiring tales that touch your day. Thank you for your support. At a table near the front sat my parents, Walter and Marie Bennett. Their smiles looked stiff and forced. My younger sister, Natalie, was also there, scrolling through her phone as if she'd been dragged along against her will. Knowing her history, this was probably her third new phone this year. We were never particularly close, and the distance between us had only grown over time. I pushed aside the uncomfortable tension. Tonight wasn't about old family dynamics. It was about love, commitment, and the future. Or so I thought. Marie stood up and gently tapped her wine glass with a spoon. The sound echoed through the room as conversations died down and all eyes turned to her. With a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, she said, "May I have everyone's attention, please? First, I want to congratulate my beautiful daughter Olivia and her wonderful fiancé Ryan. I hope your marriage is filled with love, joy, and happiness." There was a round of raised glasses and polite applause. I smiled and thanked Ryan as he squeezed my hand under the table. But when my mother spoke again, her voice suddenly became colder and more deliberate. "I also have an important announcement to make," she said as she set down her drink. "After discussing it with Walter, we've decided to give Olivia's $45,000 wedding fund to Natalie instead." The room fell silent. I blinked, sure I must have misheard. I looked around, let out a small laugh, expecting someone else to join in. "That's funny, Mom," I said, trying to sound lighthearted. "But that money is mine. You can't just give it away." Marie's smile instantly disappeared. Her lips pressed into a thin line as her face hardened. "This isn't a joke, Olivia," she snapped. "Your sister is getting married a few months after you, and she needs the money more than you do." Heat rushed to my face. My stomach tightened. "What are you talking about? That's my money, Mom. You and Dad gave it to me. It's in my personal account." "Sweetie," she began with artificial calmness, "you have a good job, and so does Ryan. Natalie and her fiancé are struggling, and she deserves a beautiful wedding too." My hands started to shake as I stood up, trying to steady myself. "We've already planned our wedding with that money. We've been careful with it. We're being responsible. We even want to use part of it for a down payment on a house. You can't just take it away." Natalie nearly knocked over her drink as she abruptly pushed back her chair and jumped to her feet. "Olivia, stop being so selfish," she shouted. "You could have offered to share it a long time ago. You know I need it more than you do." My jaw clenched as I turned to face her. "This isn't about need, Natalie. It's about what's right. I planned ahead. You spent all your own money, and now you expect me to just hand mine over." "She lives modestly," my mother insisted. "She doesn't have much, and her fiancé is doing the best he can. You've always had more." "I've always worked harder," I fired back, crossing my arms. "I follow the rules. I saved. I planned. I don't care how you try to justify it. I'm not giving you my money." Marie's cheeks flushed red. The tension in the room reached an unbearable level. Ryan tried to calm me with a gentle hand on my arm, but I wouldn't back down. Then, in what felt like slow motion, my mother stepped forward and slapped me hard across the face. The sound cracked like a whip throughout the restaurant. My head jerked to the side. My eyes instantly watered, and my cheeks stung, not just from the pain but from the shock. The room fell completely silent. No one moved. Even Natalie looked stunned. Slowly, I turned back to face my mother. "You don't get to hit me just because I said no," I said in a steady, quiet voice. Someone at a nearby table gasped. Then I heard it, a server at the bar speaking softly into a phone. "Yes, hello? I need to report an assault. It just happened at Hartley's Bistro." Minutes later, sirens could be heard approaching the restaurant. The guests sat in silence, some looking at me, others awkwardly staring at their plates, not knowing how to react. I remained quiet, processing the shock of what had just happened. My cheek hurt, but the emotional sting was much deeper. While my father quietly pulled Marie aside, trying to calm her, Ryan stood next to me, his jaw tight with anger. Two uniformed officers entered the restaurant shortly after. One approached our table and asked if I had been assaulted. I confirmed what happened with a quiet nod. A nearby server stepped forward to describe the slap, explaining how Marie had hit me in front of everyone. Marie tried to justify herself, claiming it was just a family matter, but the officer patiently explained that violence in public is illegal regardless of the relationship. The officers asked if I wanted to press charges. Despite my pounding heart, I spoke firmly. "Yes, I do." Right there in the restaurant, they arrested Marie. As the officers led her out in handcuffs, I saw Natalie looking at me in shock, as if I were the villain for simply defending myself. My father silently followed them out. The room remained frozen, guests uncertain whether to console me, cry, or leave. Throughout it all, Ryan never let go of my hand. Later that evening, after consulting with my attorney, I officially filed a report and pursued criminal charges. Marie was released on bail the next day, but the legal process had already begun. A few weeks later, we returned to court, this time for the assault rather than the money. Marie stood before the judge as they reviewed the restaurant security footage and witness statements. The evidence was undeniable. She was found guilty of misdemeanor assault and received a $2,000 fine, 6 months of probation, and mandatory anger management classes. Fortunately, the judge gave her a 30-day suspended jail sentence rather than actual incarceration. As I sat in the courtroom, she avoided making eye contact with me. When the judge asked if I had anything to say, I stood up, looked directly into my mother's eyes, and answered clearly. I never expected this from my mother, but no one is above the law. I wrongly thought things would calm down once the trial drama subsided. The slap and the arrest only widened the divide in our family. Marie didn't contact me. Natalie blocked me on everything. And my father? He chose to stay silent. But the real storm was yet to come. 3 weeks after the engagement party, I returned home to find a thick envelope in my mailbox, the kind that makes your stomach drop. It was from Prescott and Myers, a law firm. Inside was an official notice. My parents were suing me for the $45,000 fund, claiming I had misappropriated it and that it was only meant for educational expenses. At first, I laughed in disbelief. The money had been placed in a custodial account when I was 17, making it legally mine. I gained full control when I turned 18. Our parents had told both Natalie and me that we could use our money however we wanted once we became adults. The only difference was that I had been cautious, practical, and forward-thinking. I used some of it to pay for my education at a public university, covered the rest with a scholarship, and let the account grow. I was always planning for the future. In contrast, Natalie attended an expensive private college, dropped out after 2 years, and used the remaining funds to start a boutique that failed after 6 months. She wasted her money on a launch party with hired influencers, an expensive photo shoot, and fancy branding. When it all collapsed, all she had left was a luxury car she'd bought on impulse, believing her business would succeed. Now that she had spent her money, she and my parents wanted mine. I hired Amanda Ross, a sharp, composed, and confident attorney. She reviewed my documents, then looked at me and said, "They don't have a case. The account was gifted to you. There are no restrictions on how you use it. Any claims about a verbal agreement won't stand up in court." I nodded, both relieved and frustrated. "Then why go through all this?" I asked. Amanda shrugged. "Because some people would rather drag you down than admit they made mistakes, especially when they're protecting someone else." Suddenly, I realized I was facing not just a court battle, but a lifetime of imbalance, denial, and favoritism. My mother wasn't simply trying to take my money. She was making me pay for Natalie's failures in an attempt to make things even. The months that followed were among the most draining of my life. The legal matter consumed everything I had: time, energy, even focus at work. There were numerous preliminary hearings, emails, papers, and discovery requests. I was constantly reminded that this was more than just a lawsuit when I walked into the courtroom and saw my parents sitting beside Natalie, all of them avoiding eye contact with me. It was a betrayal. During the hearings, Natalie wore smug expressions, clearly confident she would somehow take the money I had been safeguarding for years. During one particularly tense session, she testified before the court, claiming the fund had always been exclusively for college. "Did you use all of your funds strictly for college expenses?" my lawyer asked pointedly as she stood up. Natalie hesitated and mumbled, "Well, not all of it." Amanda nodded. "In fact, you dropped out of college and used the remaining amount for your own business venture and a luxury car, didn't you?" Natalie's expression tightened. "That's not relevant." "But it is highly relevant," Amanda continued. "If there were supposedly strict conditions on this money, why were you allowed to use it for non-educational purposes without objection?" Natalie had no response. I sat quietly as the courtroom listened, my heart racing but steady. My parents' favoritism, Natalie's irresponsibility, and their attempt to cover her failures by punishing me were all suddenly being exposed. Outside the courtroom, Ryan remained my rock. He attended every hearing, supported me through every obstacle, and never stopped reminding me that standing my ground was important. But it wasn't easy. It felt like everything I had planned for my wedding was slipping away because of legal bills and emotional exhaustion. Some of our planning had to be postponed. I lost sleep. Sometimes I cried in the middle of the night, other times between work meetings. But I never gave up. I realized this fight wasn't just about money. For once, it was about holding my family accountable, about being seen, and about being valued. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. My cousin Emma called me while I was at home reviewing a list of wedding vendors. "Olivia," she said sympathetically, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry about the wedding being canceled." My heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" "The wedding's still on." There was a pause. "Your mom called me last week. She said you and Ryan broke up because he cheated on you." My jaw dropped. In the hour that followed, I received 3 more calls from confused friends and distant relatives asking why the wedding had been canceled. Some had even received fake emails supposedly from me claiming the event was off. When I checked my email, there was nothing in my sent folder, indicating someone had created a fake account to impersonate me. I was shocked. My first thought was of Natalie. The pattern was clear, but I had no proof. Legal action was just the beginning of the sabotage. It had turned personal. I called my mom's sister, Aunt Jenna, one of the few family members who hadn't taken sides. "I was about to call you," she sighed. "Your mother's been telling people you're lying about Ryan, that you're unstable, and that the wedding was never really happening." I leaned against the wall, exhausted. "Why is she doing this?" I asked. "Because she's protecting Natalie," Aunt Jenna replied kindly. "She's always protected her, even when she didn't deserve it. I love Natalie, but your mom is enabling her, and now she's dragging you through the mud to make her look better." The betrayal was deeper than any testimony given in court. My own mother was trying to damage my reputation to gain sympathy for my sister. When Ryan came home that night, he immediately noticed my face. "What's wrong?" he asked. I told him what Emma had said and showed him screenshots of the fake emails. He wasn't surprised, but he was angry. "Your sister contacted me too," he added grimly. "She said she had proof that you were cheating on me. She sent photos." I looked at him, horrified. He took out his phone and showed me several poorly made, obviously manipulated images of a woman standing with an unknown man, with my face crudely pasted onto another body. It was disturbing, but also laughably bad. Ryan shook his head. "Of course, I didn't believe it, but she sent them to my parents, too. Your family is trying to destroy everything we're building." At that point, we decided to take action. We hired a professional security company for the wedding and sent them photos of Marie, Walter, and Natalie with instructions that none of them be allowed entry. I hated that it had come to this, but I couldn't let them ruin anything else. I woke up on my wedding day feeling a strange mix of anxiety and excitement. Ryan and I had chosen a beautiful outdoor venue just outside Pine Harbor, elegant and intimate without being excessive. White chairs lined the grassy area facing a wooden arch covered in fresh flowers. As guests began to arrive, I stood in the bridal suite in my dress, adjusting my veil. Nerves tightened in my stomach. not because of the vows, but because of what I knew might still happen. Two professional security officers were stationed at the venue entrance with strict orders to bar my immediate family members from entering. I had reviewed all the details with Ryan, but I still couldn't relax. At about 2:15, there was a knock on the bridal suite door. One of the guards entered, speaking quietly. "Ms. Bennett," he began carefully, "we've just detained a young woman trying to enter through the back service entrance. She matches the photo you gave us. Your sister, Natalie?" My heart raced. "Was she alone?" I asked. "Yes," he replied, "but she was carrying a tote bag. When we checked it, we found a large can of red paint." My throat tightened with each breath. She had planned to ruin my wedding dress, the venue, the guests. Disbelief, sadness, and anger competed for space in my chest. "Do you want to press charges?" the guard asked. "We can call the local sheriff right now." I paused. After the slap, the lawsuit, the lies, the manipulated photos, and now this. I had every reason to call the police again. But this was my wedding day. Their chaos had already cost me enough. "No," I finally answered flatly. "Just make sure she's removed from the property and doesn't come back. Also, please check that my parents haven't tried to sneak in." He nodded and left. I sank into a nearby chair, trying not to cry. My best friend, Zoe, knelt beside me. "What happened?" she whispered. I looked at her, my voice barely steady. "Natalie tried to sneak in with a can of paint. She was going to destroy everything." Zoe's eyes widened in surprise, then hardened with anger. "You know what?" she said firmly. "That means you win. They couldn't stop your happiness, so they tried to ruin it. But you stopped them. You stood your ground. Now go marry the man who stood by you through all of this. You deserve every moment of this day." I wiped away my tears, took a deep breath, and stood up. My Uncle David, my father's brother, walked me down the aisle. As I entered the garden, Ryan was waiting under the arch, his eyes fixed on mine. In that moment, the rest of the world disappeared. The pain, the tears, the court dates, the betrayal, all of it faded away. Today was about love. The ceremony was beautiful and moving. Our vows were filled with promises of partnership, strength, and loyalty. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the guests erupted in cheers. For the first time in months, I felt light, free. The reception exceeded our expectations in every way. Heartfelt speeches from those who had supported us throughout it all were interspersed with music and laughter. Zoe's toast brought tears to my eyes, the kind that come only after you've weathered a storm and found peace on the other side. Ryan and I celebrated, danced, and ate as if nothing else mattered. Because truly, nothing else did. Many guests commented on how beautiful the venue looked, how happy we seemed, and how the day was filled with genuine love. A few guests, aware of bits of the drama, respected our privacy. During dinner, one aunt leaned over and whispered, "I'm so proud of you for standing your ground." Her words continued to echo with me long after the cake was cut and the last song played. As the night ended, Ryan and I ran hand in hand through a shower of rice thrown by our friends, sheltered under a starry sky. We smiled like children as we climbed into the waiting car and drove away. I turned for a moment to look back at the distant glow of the venue. My sister had tried to destroy that moment. All of them had tried, but they failed. We had the most amazing honeymoon, 3 weeks in a peaceful seaside town far from Pine Harbor. No courts, no conflicts, just the man I loved, the sun, and the waves. I took a deep breath. For the first time in a very long time, I felt ready to move forward. When we returned home, we focused on settling into our new apartment, planning for the future, and leaving the past behind. A few weeks later, I ran into my cousin Rachel at the grocery store. "Did you hear about Natalie's wedding?" she asked after a quick hug. I raised an eyebrow. "We're not exactly on speaking terms," I replied. "Your parents took out a loan to pay for everything," she said. "It's at the Grand Oaks Hotel downtown. Super lavish. They're flying in a chef from out of state. It's quite a production." I couldn't help but laugh quietly. They were clearly going all out for Natalie, even if it meant going into debt. "Are you going if she invites you?" Rachel asked gently. "She tried to ruin my wedding with a can of paint," I said angrily. "So no, I won't be attending." Strangely enough, no invitation ever arrived. I later learned through family rumors that several relatives declined invitations to Natalie's wedding because they were uncomfortable with how I had been treated. Some were polite about it. Others spoke up. Either way, The shine had begun to fade, both for Natalie and for my parents. The $45,000 had been used exactly as Ryan and I had planned. Our wedding was everything we could have hoped for, modest, purposeful, and surrounded by people who truly cared. We put the remaining funds toward a down payment on a lovely apartment outside the city. With our combined salaries, the mortgage was manageable, and for the first time, we were building equity instead of throwing money away on rent. Though small, our home was truly ours, built on patience and hard choices rather than handouts. After the wedding, my life found a rhythm I didn't know I needed. Ryan and I spent weekends decorating our new place. Nothing extravagant, just walls covered with photos from our wedding and trips, shelves we installed ourselves, and a couch we saved for. One Saturday afternoon, Ryan laughed as he struggled with an assembly kit bookcase while we were setting up the guest room. "Who do you think will be our first overnight guest?" he asked. I paused, holding a screwdriver. My thoughts briefly turned to my parents. In some distant reality, they might apologize. Perhaps Natalie would grow up and take responsibility for her actions. But I wasn't holding my breath. Finally, with a gentle smile, I said, "Whoever it is, it'll be someone who truly cares about us." Holidays passed without texts, calls, or invitations. Their absence hurt at first. For the first time, my birthday went by in silence, without hearing my mother's voice wishing me well. But then I thought of the slap, the lawsuit, the lies, the paint, the fake photos, and the jealousy-driven attempt to ruin something innocent. And the pain gave way to understanding. Occasionally, Ryan would ask if I thought my family and I would ever reconcile. "Maybe someday," I answered honestly. "But if it happens, it'll take more than an apology. It'll take change, and I don't see that coming anytime soon." Eventually, Natalie's wedding came and went. I heard it was extravagant, matching designer outfits for the bridesmaids, champagne fountains, and a hired string quartet. However, several important family members chose not to attend, uncomfortable with how my parents and sister had treated me. Worse, word spread that Walter and Marie had taken out an enormous loan, throwing everything into that single event in an attempt to make a statement and pretend the previous year hadn't happened. But it had, and people remembered. As Ryan and I developed our marriage, I came to a profound realization. Family isn't just your blood relatives. It's the people who respect your boundaries, celebrate your victories, and honor your peace. Yes, I had lost a lot, but I had gained a home, a husband who supported me unconditionally, and friends and relatives who never wavered after seeing the truth. Above all, I still had myself. I didn't break down. I refused to give in. I defended what I had built out of principle, not greed. The $45,000 bought us stability, a home, and a future. But in reality, it gave us freedom. Freedom from manipulation, freedom from guilt, freedom from a family that believed obedience was a condition for love. I stood up for myself, and I won, not just in court, but in life.